gentlemen. Call to order. I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors August 17, 2022 meeting at 5:30 to order. Okay, announcements. Welcome all, especially new Patton Township residents, to the Patton Township community, a place for all. Doug, is there any announcements?
Yes, ma'am. I have two announcements. One, the Board of Supervisors met in executive session on August 12th. They met with the Director of Finance and Administration, the Township Solicitor, and our Labor Council to review a draft agreement of the collective bargaining agreement with the Township's Police Officers Association. Please see item 4B on the current agenda for further information. Second announcement is that the board has approved moving of item 6B to occur right after we're done with item 3B. This is a request from the applicant who has another meeting he has to attend later this evening.
Okay.
That's the end of my report.
All right. As you are able, please rise and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next is additions to the posted agenda. Are there any items that the supervisors would like to add to the posted agenda at this time? Supervisor? Okay. Seeing none, moving on. Next on the agenda is public comments. Residents, taxpayers may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point in the meeting. If you're attending by Zoom, please use the raised hand feature of the Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate it's your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate it is your opportunity to speak. Please be respectful and defer from any profanity, derogatory, or offensive language, abbreviations, or gestures during the meeting. Respect is always given by this board, and expect the same in return. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none. Okay, we have presentations and public hearing. Resolutions of support. Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month and Day. Doug, would you like to?
Yes, as we do every year, the Center County Suicide Prevention Task Force has requested support for designating September as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, and specifically September 10th as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Day. The board should consider action to approve the resolution. Also, the agenda did include some additional information about the topic, signs to look for, and who to contact if somebody is in need of help.
Okay, thank you. Are there any supervisors that would like to comment or have questions before voting? Supervisor Whitman?
I'd like to move that we approve the resolution as presented.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The resolution 2022-016 is adopted. Moving on, next on the agenda is firearm safety. Doug, would you like to give us an update?
Yeah, as a companion piece to the prior resolution, Supervisor Robb asked that the board consider the approval of a resolution supporting the prevention of gun violence and the safe and secure firearm storage initiatives that are occurring Center County. Before I go on, I'll recognize Chief Jolly, who would like to make a couple comments.
Yep, as part of this resolution, one of the agencies that our agency has actually partnered with is Project Child Safe, and they provide free gun locks to us. So we always have these available for the public up in the lobby at the Township Building, and generally any kind of event that we go to, we take a box of these with us. So they're free of charge. Come in and help yourself for as many that you need. We're happy to continue to provide these free of cost, and we really appreciate Child Project Safe with the support that they give us. So.
Thank you, Chief. Is there any supervisor that has a question or comment? All right, can I get a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-017?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? The resolution 2022-017 is adopted. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is the grant sponsorship for Top Trees Resort Redevelopment. Doug again.
Yeah, I'll do a quick introduction, then turn it over to the development team here, but I've been working with the ownership group for Top Trees Resort and Mr. Leroy Klein with Delta Development on the submission of 2 grant applications that would support this project and also support what I termed long-needed upgrades to Top Trees Avenue. If you recall, we went down this path with the Nittany Valley Sports Center. I'm going to say 5 years ago we started that project. It may not be quite that long, but that project is over. And that was a grant to support the Sports Center construction, and then also there was grant money in there also to support the improvements to Fox Hill Road and Burnell Road intersection out by the airport. I'm not going to go deeply into the specifics here. We'll leave that to the development team. But the 2 grants are, one, a redevelopment assistance capital program grant. We commonly refer to that as a RACP grant. That's $2.5 million for the site. And the other grant is a multimodal transportation fund grant that would come through the Commonwealth Financing Authority and the Department of Community and Economic Development with the state. That one is $2.15 million, and that would support several upgrades to Top Trees Avenue that are required, as noted on the agenda in page 4 there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the development team. I think Mr. Leroy Klein's going to speak first, and he can introduce the others there with him. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Good evening, and thank you for your time. It's a pleasure to be in front of you again. It's been a little while, but as I was looking over my notes for tonight, I realized that we've worked together on 6 previous projects, and all of those projects have been successful, and we were able to bring federal and state dollars back to Patton Township. Tonight is similar to previous applications. We're trying to bring additional funds for a multimodal project at the Top Trees Resort. Included in your packet, we've illustrated the exact budget expenditures. It's the enclosure that has the chart with the dollar figures. Those dollar figures illustrate the sidewalk improvements, road widening, stormwater improvements. It provides for future trails. It provides for improved access drive. We're trying to increase the safety there. There's a site visibility issue when you try to get in and out. We have a plan to open that up and create a boulevard. I think the project will be well received. There are township funds that have been set aside to do a portion of this project, and with the private developer, we have a good combination in the grant. We have private funds, we have township funds, and we'd have state funds. That's the multimodal project. The second project is the Capital Redevelopment. I would call your attention to 2 enclosures. The first is the chart that illustrates the potential development. On the back, you will see the most recent rendering of what the new Top Trees would look like. Candidly, it's a very exciting project. The development team there may be investing as much as $50 million, but we have some site challenges. You know, out there, we have internal road issues, we have stormwater management challenges, we have a demolition project that's fairly significant. So we've put together for you tonight a description of what we would do with that fund, what we would do with the funds. In this case, the match is provided strictly by the private developer, and the township is also held harmless on a liability standpoint. It's been a little while, so I put in your packet exactly what the township would do in sponsoring this application. This is the chart. The township is never on the hook for any of the funds. State College Friends, the name of the private development, actually advances all the funds for the project, and then they get reimbursed by the state as the project is completed. We will be completing the reimbursement forms. We've done this with the township on 4 previous occasions. I'm pleased to report we've never had any issue on any of the applications. We've never had an audit issue. You have a good reputation with DCED and the Governor's Budget Office, and we want to keep it that way. This is the process that they're comfortable with. It's the process we've used before, and I'm hoping that you will consider it using again. The thing that I would say to you in closing is, we have a window of opportunity. The political landscape will be changing next year in Patton Township. I think this is a unique window of opportunity to take the private investment that's being provided and use that to leverage state funds to make safety and highway improvements. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Is there any supervisor that has questions at this time? Supervisor Whitman.
Just a quick one on the plans. Looking at the parking, the immediate impression is that there's not enough parking and that it's located fairly far from the main entrance. But I'm assuming that you've considered that and that the parking spaces are adequate.
It's a very good observation. If you look on the front of the description, you will see that the original parking configuration had it much closer. One of the things we're looking at is how we can create a grand boulevard so that when you drive up, it's similar to the boulevard that you might see, for example, at the Hershey Hotel, where you can tell that you're coming into a resort facility. So those parking spaces that you see here will probably be reconfigured to go around the final footprint of the hotel.
Gotcha.
They're put there now strictly to illustrate the use of the totality of the space, but the closeness of parking to the rooms is a very important consideration.
Great. I figured that would come out in the wash.
Yeah, just to note, nothing we're approving today or considering today is a approval in any way of the resort plan for the resort. They will still have to come back through our normal process, our land development plan process, and go to the planning commission, and ultimately then come back before the board. Staff will be doing checks of all the requirements under zoning and subdivision to make sure that we've satisfied all those requirements.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Or are there questions from the public at this time? Okay, seeing none. Can I get a motion to adopt the resolution 2022-019? Or,
So moved.
can I get a second?
Second.
Okay,
Aye.
Betsy? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Resolution 2022-019 is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Next on the agenda, Doug, we are moving
Item 6B.
6B to 6C, and that's the Land Development Plan, Patton Crossing Phase 2, Director, Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. Alexandra.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This plan is for Phase 2 of Patton Crossing. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. Okay. So, back in 2020, the board approved construction of the Aldi, which is here, that was in phase 1. Phase 2 will involve this area adjacent to North Atherton Street. The proposed building is Building C. It is approximately a total of 14,873 square feet. The improvements to the roadway include this turn lane that I'm pointing to, this left turn lane, and also this right turn lane onto Woody Crest, and the construction of Basin 2 down here will need to be completed for this land development.
Okay.
So the Planning Commission at their August 1st meeting conditionally approved the plan, stating that completion of all items in the staff comment letters should be completed, and the inclusion of bicycle parking per the MXD2 overlay regulations. And I'll turn it over to the development team. Do you want to point out? Oh, you don't.
Good evening. Tony Fruchtel. I'm with Pantera Engineering. We're the civil engineer for the project. Been here for you in front of this board a couple of times for this project. As Alex mentioned, the Aldi Phase 1, the entrance drive, which was constructed right here. Part of the development for the site work, the access that Alex talked about would be an additional lane for the entrance drive. So there would be a dedicated left turn lane, a dedicated right turn lane, and a through lane to Woody Crest Street there as part of the project. There has been an HOP application submitted to PennDOT. It's been reviewed. We've been through all the, I'll call it the major issues, meaning we know what the improvements are going to look like. They're still dealing with some right-of-way issues along here, just kind of what the easements look like, because there's some utilities that need relocated, and there's some signal timing issues for the signal. As you may know, right now, the signals that are out here are temporary signals that were put in when the Aldi went in, and they're scheduled to be replaced with this HOP in Phase 2. As Alex mentioned, this is the proposed building right here. It's about a 9,000 square foot footprint, but that 9,000 square feet is actually on the second floor of the building. It's 5,000 square feet on the first floor, and then you see 3 drive-through lanes here that would be a window, ATM, and then kind of the pneumatic service on the outside lanes. And there would be offices on the second floor of the building in this area right here. Phase 2 also includes a retaining wall that goes around the site. Be very similar to the one on the other side. As far as height, what it looks like, kind of where the buildings sit. There'll be site lighting. The site lighting will be very similar to what's on the Aldi side. The landscaping will be very similar also with uplighting. There'll be irrigation put in there. There'll be uplighting on those trees and plants. We did get a comment on the landscaping. They did ask to have some of the plants revised per the arborist, Betsy, so I think they'll have no problem kind of swapping some of those things out to what the township typically sees. What's shown on here, this is the master plan sheet of the plan set, and as such, we wanted to show what we anticipate for future development to be, which would be a building right here and a building that may or may not be split in this location. These 2 buildings are not being built at this point. That's sort of not part of this point of this development. But we did kind of want the board to see how we anticipate them sitting in relationship to what's being proposed. On the existing master plan, actually this building that was a bank actually sat back here a little bit. But when they talked about what this building's going to look like, the owners kind of said, hey, let's move that forward. Let's present that building a little bit, and we'll look at okay, there we go. So there's a rendering of the building. So there's a lot of, you can see there's a lot of glass, there's some metal, some aluminum, some glass, stone around the back. So they really like the presentation of this building, so they pulled it forward on the site there. So you can see this would kind of be the drive-through around that back corner. The main entrance would be kind of this area right here. First floor, typical bank activities for the public. Second floor would be offices and administration for the bank. So the parking would be this area right here. There's 53 spaces, I believe, scheduled to be put in with the bank right here. In total, when you add that up with the Aldi, because the Aldi actually has extra parking spaces, there's an excess of, I think 40 or 50 spaces at this point. But that'll get caught back up, of course, when these buildings go in. There will be on-site trash and recycling would be right here. That would be kind of centrally located and designed to serve all the buildings once they're constructed. There will be sidewalk access the whole way around the site, be internal access right here. There will be a set of stairs that come up right from kind of this main corner, this kind of, you can see what's on the other side. This would be the same thing. It would be a set of stairs that get you up, because that level will be up from this area right here. Sewer, water are all accessible through the rear of the site. They all come off of Atherton Street at this point right here. As Alex mentioned, stormwater goes to a basin in the back here. It actually goes back here, it's managed, and then it comes back out and discharges through this pipe right here. Almost the entire site ends up going through that pipe at some point, so whether it comes back or it's in the front there, it ends up going through there. The lighting will be LED lighting for the site. There will be curfew lighting. It is a bank, so there's a certain element of safety there, so that's per township standards. One of the things that we did not have on the plan that the Planning Commission and staff mentioned was bicycle parking. So we will get that added to the plan. We'll find a place for that. It's not shown on this plan, but I'm confident that we can find some place to put that to serve all these, the proposed development. Currently, right now, there is a bike path that goes through the site. It kind of comes off of Park Forest Avenue, wanders through the site, and there we go. It uses existing roads, comes through the site, and then attaches to Atherton Street right there. That bike path will remain in place, and they'll be able to cross the proposed road right here and access Atherton Street. The final master plan has a bike route on it, but it did not anticipate connecting back to Atherton Street. It basically connected from Park Forest Avenue to the Temple property, if at some point that gets developed. The thinking was that it was kind of safer to get folks maybe over to Martin Street or Aaron Drive through this property here. So, but for right now, we can certainly keep people, if they want to, get back to Atherton Street through that point right there. So, those are kind of the big features, points of the development, proposed development. Planning Commission looked at it. They recommended getting in front of this body for review, and we're asking for conditional approval on the plan. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any supervisors that have questions or comments at this time? Oh, Supervisor Trevino.
Tony, I have two questions. One is traffic movement, the people going through the drive-throughs. How will they be exiting?
So it'll all move through here, it'll come around the building here, so then they can come back out here, they can come back out here, and then both of these have full movement in either direction. So you could come down here. This is a right in, right out at this point right here. Of course, this is a full-way intersection, so
Okay.
drive-through would come across the front of the building and then out one of these drive aisles and out.
Okay, second question, this is, when I drive by, I see a concrete tower with, looks like a manhole cover on top.
Yes.
I assume you're going to put in fill so that all of that is covered, and so the surface will be equivalent to where the manhole cover is at the top.
Yes, sir. That manhole would be this structure right here. It's close to where it's going to be, probably within a foot or two. So that does give you an idea where that's going to sit. But yes, that would all be filled in. The wall is two-tiered. There would be a lower wall and a higher wall. Again, just like this side right here. And yes, that would all be filled in. That will not be sticking up in the air.
Thank you.
Supervisor Whitman, did you have a question?
Of course. Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the designer. I believe he's subcontracted for the landscaping,
Yes.
or not within, it's really outstanding. And what you've done in Aldi is great. It's really, I can't thank you enough. I will note that Lance King, I believe it was, who made the comments from the boroughs.
Yes.
On borough staff. I guess what he doesn't know is that we only require 75% native plants, or that, the ordinance. And he did make a comment about ginkgos. They're not native, but I think they're fairly tolerant trees in urban areas. You certainly see them a lot. So I'll just add that. Doesn't matter to me if it's so desired. And I will give a heads up that some of the shrubs, which most people don't look at, shrubs are the poor stepchild of the trees. Some of them might be water stress. I would just have your landscapers, I'm sure know that, and it sounds like you're having the irrigation system.
We can get back to them on that.
Yeah, sure. Just
Sure.
more heads up on that. They're wonderful. They're my favorite.
I'm sure the developer only wants to put them in once, so
Mhm.
put something that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Really great.
Alex, can we just put that,
Plan back up?
yeah, thank you. Supervisor Abrams.
I was relieved when I saw the plan. Many people may remember historically that it was believed that Patton Township required a bank to be put in any new commercial area that we approved.
You don't?
It's not true.
You don't?
It's not true, but it is kind of reassuring to see a bank there.
I just have a question on where you showed the steps.
Right here.
Yeah. Is there another way, like it's not ADA accessibility piece?
Yeah, so both this sidewalk here and this sidewalk here are ADA compliant the entire
Okay.
way around the site and then onto the site right here. The entire route is ADA compliant. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. That's what I needed to know.
What happens
Any
at the
other, any other?
What happens at the steps if it's ADA compliant?
Uh,
The steps that are up at the top left.
Well, they don't, yeah, they're just an alternate route. You have to have one ADA compliant route,
Okay, so
and you can have other routes that are not
There's
ADA.
also a ramp or something else that's there.
Pardon?
There's a ramp or something else that's there besides the steps.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this sidewalk right here is ADA compliant, yes, that's correct,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Seeing no other questions? Do you have a question?
Yeah, we don't know what other businesses are going to be,
We do not. I do not have an answer. They-
it seems like the parking situation, because you were saying a lot of that is unused.
There is, by ordinance, there is extra parking spaces on the Aldi side. And when we did the master plan, there was kind of there'll be kind of a running tally of the parking. The use that's there versus what's required. And then it also requires at certain points, I think it might be like 40% and 70%, that we actually do a parking study, like kind of go out and count cars that are there and evaluate, hey, are we over or are we under? Is it okay that because the master plan parking is based on a mixed use scenario where like Aldi doesn't use any of their parking at night. So that could very easily share with something that uses overnight parking, like residential. So based on that, we'll be doing some studies down the road to kind of evaluate where are we at as far as parking. Is there too much? Is there not enough? So when we come in with a plan and say, hey, we're short a few spaces, but it's okay because we're overlapping, or hey, we need spaces and here's how we plan to address that. So. Did I answer?
Yeah, the other buildings on the side, they'll have to come back with another land development
Yes.
plan for approval before they can build those, so we'll get another look at it.
Yes.
They'll have to again make sure they meet the parking requirements.
Yes.
And at some point, if we need to, we'll do the 30 or 40 minute explanation of height calculate parking
Yeah, thank you.
for
Yes.
this
Yeah,
project.
so those, we'll be back in when those other uses come in with looking at the parking again, to make sure it works.
Yeah, the parking requirements are fairly sophisticated. As Tony said, we were looking at, you can share parking between different uses because you don't need them at the same time of day. So as this thing all builds out, every time it builds out, we'll be doing another look at the parking to make sure it's, A, there's enough for the whole site, and like I said, it's probably a 30-minute just explanation of how you get to know if they have enough or not. But that's what Alex will continue to do, is she can blame me for developing the parking calculations if she wants to. 'Cause that's
Thank you.
probably mine.
Doug, Mr. Jim Payne is on. Jim? I think he has his hand up.
Tony, early in your presentation, when you were talking about the vegetation, you mentioned uplighting on the vegetation. I don't recall any mention before the Planning Commission of uplighting.
Jim,
And-
could you speak up and repeat your question?
Okay,
Want to put that out there. Moving forward, again, the township, Susan and her team would start right-of-way talks, just making sure these owners are on board. Retain an engineering firm for final design in 2023 with an estimated cost of around $105,000. And then submit the grant applications for this work in 2023, be it PennDOT MTF, DCED, DCNR money. We would work through that with an estimated construction of about $687 to construct that. It's about a quarter mile of trail. And again, as I said, there would be some slight stormwater drainage improvements up here at Circleville and Scotia. In addition, this hillside will get cut back, so there's better sight distance when you're pulling out from Circleville. With that, I was told to keep it brief, so questions?
Okay. Questions from supervisors at this time? Ooh, quiet. Betsy? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's right. I remember hearing the discussion about the right-of-way at the RAC meeting, but I need a refresher. Does the path actually, is it designed to actually be in some people's property? Or, I know there's some sense of property ownership versus actual property.
Yes, so you can see kind of this purple line here, I'm kind of outlining it. This
Okay.
purple line is the road right away right now, okay? So you can see the path is outside of it.
Gotcha. I
It's
see
in
what
the
you're saying.
backyards
Okay, yeah.
of these three residents.
And then the dark green is where grading would have to occur?
Yeah, dark green is grading.
Of course.
And that can be, I mean, right now we have very gentle, gradual slopes on
Yeah.
this. They can be tightened up and lessen impacts.
Yeah.
And we've also accounted for putting landscaping at the top edge here,
Yeah,
such as
okay.
an evergreen row or something.
And I think you talked about fences possible.
The possible fences, and that would all be part of the right-of-way discussions.
Yeah, right, okay, thank you.
Supervisor Torino?
You talked about not fully ADA compliant, and just to clarify, it's because of the slope?
Correct. The longitudinal slope of Circleville Road coming into the Scotia Road intersection is about 12%. Ideally, for a trail, you'd like to keep it less than 5%. You can go 8.33% up to a 30 feet length. However, the federal laws, the PROWAG, allows a side path or sidewalk to parallel the roadway slope. So for instance, in Pittsburgh, where it's hilly, you can call that ADA accessible because obviously you're not going to put the sidewalk at a different slope than the road. So this is the only section, and it's maybe 150 feet. And as you continue up Circleville Path, we were looking at this just before the meeting, as you'll go up the hill, there's a sign up on top of the hill. The slopes to get up there are close to 12% at times.
That's pretty
So
steep.
this would not exceed anything that people are used to using on Circleville Bike Path or on Grace Woods.
Okay. Supervisor Torino, you have another question?
No.
Okay. Supervisor Abrams.
At the intersection of Circle Road and Scotia, where we solved a problem that could have been extremely expensive just by installing stop signs, will this change anything there?
It will still be a three-way stop. The only thing is cars that are coming up the hill will now need to stop about 10 feet farther back, but the hillside is going to be cut back, so there's sight distance there for those cars to be farther down the hill.
So it'll be pretty well marked where people have to stop back there, because like if it's snowing or there's fog or something, people like to stop at intersections, and it'll take some getting used to, I think.
Yeah, so generally we wouldn't put a pedestrian crossing markings here in terms of a sign, like the neon green signs you see, just given that it's an intersection, but consideration could be given that to further emphasize that pedestrians could cross at that location.
Any other questions? So what is the board's pleasure?
It's exciting.
Move to it, what's the better?
But direct, I move
To
to
recommend-
direct staff to update the project narrative and budget and to begin outreach to the property owners.
For alternative two, which is the
Second.
RC recommendation.
Second.
Okay. All it says is we needed unanimous. Is everybody in agreement?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Okay, moving next on the agenda, can we get a 5-minute break? Thank you. Call this meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is Public Safety, July 2022 Public Safety Report. Chief Jolly.
All right, thank you. You have a copy of the July Public Safety Report included in your materials. You'll note that we had 126 traffic stops. Our officers wrote 32 citations, 3 parking tickets, and handled 34 criminal arrests. And the bike patrol was out, did 18 miles and 34 business checks. Under department notes, 3 males were arrested for simple assault and harassment. Victim reported that one of the males was speaking with his girlfriend. Apparently a verbal confrontation ensued. And then the 3 males physically assaulted the victim by punching and kicking him. We actually are still investigating this case and just identified a 4th person who was involved. So we'll probably be charging a 4th person in that incident as well. 2 juveniles were arrested for burglary, criminal trespass, theft, receiving stolen property. They were employed by a contractor doing some work for an apartment complex. They entered a unit that they weren't supposed to be in and removed over $2,000 in cash and various other property. We had a male who was arrested for driving under the influence, possession of a firearm without a license, possession of a small amount of marijuana and cocaine, and possession of drug paraphernalia. He was stopped for speeding, and the officer detected the odor of alcoholic beverage coming from the male, and also observed an open beer can in the vehicle. The male failed the field sobriety test and was taken into custody, and then the drugs in the gun were located incident to his arrest. We made 16 arrests for retail theft, 7 for driving under the influence. We served 16 of the 18 warrants that we attempted, and we conducted 12 vacation home checks. We did use force during one incident. It was actually one of our officers off duty was downtown State College enjoying an evening and saw somebody that he knew that he had a felony warrant for. Following our procedure, he contacted State College Police Department, who sent a uniform and marked police car over to make contact with the individual, as our officer kind of stayed back and conducted surveillance to keep an eye on where he was going. When the uniform officer tried to make contact with the individual, he attempted to flee on foot. So the officers were able to get a hold of him. They did have to take him to the ground where he was handcuffed by both the uniformed officer and our officer. The male did have some minor abrasions on his wrist, which were treated by applying a bandage to, and no injuries were reported by our officer. So nothing actually in Patton Township, but one of our officers was involved in something in an adjacent jurisdiction. Under community relations, Sergeant Shapanko conducted a ride-along for a township resident, and Officer Sunderland installed 2 child seats for vehicles for township residents. Training, our officers attended tactical response team training. Detective Haas, Officer Tuskovich, and Officer Barzell attended the 1-day update an emergency vehicle operator course that we do. Sergeant Stroud attended a grant development training. Our officers attended firearms training. All of our officers attended active shooter training at the Park Forest Middle School. And 5 of our newer officers attended mobile field force, which is riot control, and also active shooter training. I was away for much of the month on vacation, but I still was able to attend the Law Enforcement Officer of the Year Award presentation. If you didn't happen to see it or don't know what it is, DA Bernie Cantorna from the Center County District Attorney's Office yearly, about 5th year now or so, does recognize a Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. This year, for 2021, it was very deserving. 4 officers from State College Borough Police Department, as well as one of their Public Works officers, employees, were recognized for entering a house that was fully engulfed in flames and saving an occupant and being able to pull her out to safety. So very, very deserving, and it was a great award that the DA's office has started. And I also attended the Happy Valley Business Lunch. The next thing I have in the packet here, just some information on the Citizens Police Academy. We started this a number of years ago. Thanks to COVID, we took a break for a couple years, but we're happy to be introducing this again and making it available to the community. So this is an 8-week project. We accept applications online. Those applications go to the State College of Borough. But topics include CSI and forensics, some of the vehicles and equipment that we use. They do a canine, a bomb demonstration. They're going to do some range demonstrations and firearms demonstrations, use of force topics, and crisis intervention. CPR and first aid, where actually the participants can be certified if they would like through the Red Cross. So it's a pretty good program. Unfortunately, when I put the packet together, we were still accepting applications. I believe the course is now full. So if there is anybody else who's interested in it, maybe keep an eye out around this time next year for information. We did have information on our website and our social media to direct people to that. So, but our officers are actually assisting with the instruction for a few of the blocks for that. So next, I have a couple photos that I included. Recently, we did a bench dedication in memory of our crossing guard, Cliff Wilson, who passed away earlier this year after 14 years of dedicated service. So we did approach the township, and right away we received a yes answer on putting this in. Actually, since she's still here, I want to recognize Ms. Susan Wheeler, the project manager, was instrumental and a tremendous help in picking out the type of bench, the location, and some of the specifics for where it had to be placed. So really appreciate her assistance with this. But the next photo actually shows where this is at. His post was at Douglas Drive and School Drive. He was a very, very dedicated employee and a tremendous asset to our community and to the police department. So he will be missed. But we felt that this was a very fitting tribute for he and his family to come visit his son, who was at the dedication. Mentioned he's already been there a couple times just to sit on it and kind of think about his dad, which to me just made it all worthwhile. So we were very happy with that. And again, thanks Susan for that. I have a couple letters from some folks. The one is a victim of a crime that we solved. Very simply saying thank you very much, and you guys are the best. And then a letter from Chief Weaver from the Bellefonte Police Department for our assistance, thanking Officer Schaefer for helping out with the Bellefonte crews this year. Lastly, we have our record list of calls for service. We had a total of 459 calls for service. That's up from the 414 that we handled in June. The most common call for service continues to be the health and safety EMS assist, where we're helping out the ambulance. We had 56 of those, and then 40 traffic incidents. Just really quickly wanted to mention also, because we're 1 month out from today, that we are putting a tremendous amount of effort into planning the 20th annual Children's Safety Fair. It will be held on Saturday, September 17th. We'll be in the parking lot between Target and Kohl's as usual, and it will be from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. So you're going to be seeing a lot of information on our website, on our social media, and on the radio, working very closely with the Happy Valley Business Association. So it's a fantastic opportunity, though, it's called a children's fair, but it's for everybody to come out. Great opportunity for the community to interact with first responders, police, fire, EMS, and also just a tremendous support and a lot of participation from our business community in Patton Township and the surrounding area. So fantastic event. Highly recommend, if you haven't been to it, to come on out. If you have kids, even better. But we looking forward to it and putting a lot of work into it. So we hoping for good weather. So that is my report. Thank you.
Chief, that's September 17th, 2022?
That is September 17th of 2022, 1 month from today. Yep.
Okay. Any questions for Chief at this time? Let's go ahead.
I just have reaction to feedback. So I was able to do a ride along with Sergeant Anko. I think that was in July. And one, thank you, Sarge. I think we had a really good conversation, very candid conversation about his experiences, the experiences of other officers, the support that they feel from our community, from the board, but also just being able to be privy to a little bit more of the inner workings of the work that they do. And so I think I came away with that with definitely some more respect. And I would encourage our board members to, at some point, do one of those ride-alongs. It's awesome. And I mean, I don't know how much I can say, but we had quite the journey, I think, that day. And I think we also encountered Officer
Vardzell.
Yeah. And some of the work that he was doing and talk about community policing and like restorative justice. There were some events that were happening and the way in which Officer Barzell sort of like advocated for the person who was needing to be handled or whatever that may be, the way that he was sort of, the officer was talking with some of the community members or individuals who were sort of like impacted, and to see sort of like their initial reactions of like defensiveness and, you know, punishment needs to happen, to then listening to him talk about this person's story, and then just to see those same individuals sort of like start to soften. I was like, that's a perfect display of like restorative justice, the power of being able to just understand people's stories, to bring some more just compassion, humanity, and connection. And so the fact that I was able to experience all of that within a matter of probably 2 to 3 hours, I think it's probably just a testament to like what our officers are doing all the time. And yeah, definitely serves as a model for other entities outside of this space. So yeah, again, thank you, and spoke highly of your leadership to Chief Jolly. So yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you,
Real quick,
Supervisor.
thank you very much for that. And I will say, again, without getting too far into detail, one of the cases I highlighted here was a case that Supervisor Magruder did get to see the beginning of. Sergeant Shapanko was dispatched to the burglary, and it was interesting because we had a little bit of conversation back and forth, and you know, he's a junior detective. He's not quite the senior detective level yet, but yeah, we ended up making an arrest on it. It was a really interesting case. I think he learned a lot from that and enjoyed his experience with that. So, but it's open to anybody who would like to come do a ride along anytime. We're more than welcome to bring you out. So.
Thank you, Chief. Any other supervisor comment? Supervisor Whitman?
I just wanted to mention that the Community Diversity Group, again, was doing some work with Clearwater Conservancy and their outdoor program, getting people to spend time outdoors. In a presentation and along with some research, we learned that people of color are frequently uncomfortable going out on the trails, but by themselves or just a group of people of color. And then, I can't remember if it was then or another incident, somebody mentioned the location of the Citizens Police Academy. That's a rural area? Is it outside, or is some of it here?
So years past, it has been hosted by each municipality. This time around, it's going to be hosted at the police station at Beaver Stadium. All 8 weeks will be there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Because that's good to hear. So just in case in future years it is in a more rural area, it was brought out that kids of color feel less comfortable in a wooded area if they have to, walk down a path or even with a buddy, whatever. So I just thought I would add that to your arsenal of, it was a bad choice of word, but your chest of tools, I should say, whatever.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you. Any other supervisor at this time? Chief, thank you for your report. Thank you, Supervisor Magruder. We'll be looking into the ride-along. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the 2023 to 2026 collective bargaining agreement with the Patton Township Police Officers Association and Director of Finance, Larry Pager. Thank you, Larry.
Yes. So the Patton Township Police Officers Association and our Labor Council and myself have been meeting the last couple of months to negotiate a new contract, as our current contract is due to expire at the end of December of 2022. So what we have in tentative agreement that I hope that the board will consider action to approve this agreement is that we have come up with a new 4-year contract with annual raises of 6% in 2023, 5% in 2024, 4% in 2025 and 2026, an increase in our dental reimbursement, our self-insured dental plan, to increase it by $200 per level in 2023, and then $100 per level per year from 2024 to 2026. So stepping that up during the contract. The vision reimbursement, increasing the exam allowance to $200 and the hardware allowance to $400 per year. A decrease in the annual step of our starting salary from 8% to 7%. So our starting salary is based on the base pay, and then there's a step down for an employee that's here for 4 years, an employee that's here for 3 years, going down to 1. So by reducing that step, it actually brings up the starting salary for an employee, and that brings that more in line with the police organizations in the region. We're looking to add Juneteenth as a holiday and increase the pension count from being calculated just on base salary to being calculated on base salary plus $5,000. So I can take any questions anybody has, and if not, I would respectfully request that you consider approving the agreement so we can get it signed.
Supervisor, any supervisor? Supervisor Abel.
I move that we approve the agreement.
Any questions? Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Torino?
this discussion, I think, is that I want to initiate is appropriate after we vote on this, because I'm going to ask about the non-union employees, the township non-union employees, and what's your thoughts on?
So that is our next step.
Yeah.
So our thoughts were, we want to get this done, and
That's what I'm saying.
And then Doug and I will meet probably tomorrow
Okay.
on non-uniform employees, but definitely my thought, not speaking for the township manager, my thought is that we should do something for the majority of the people that are non-uniform.
Yeah, once this is approved, then you go, then take the next step, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? The motion passes. Thank you. Moving on, next on the agenda is Public Works, Operations. There are no items. All right, Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. Planning Commission report, Planning Commissioner member Robert Prosek will give us a report. Robert?
I don't see him.
He's not on anymore.
Is it not
He
on?
was up there.
He was
He
on
was up
earlier.
there, but he's gone now.
Yeah,
Okay,
Alex, do you want to give a report?
sure.
okay. Thank you, Alex.
The Planning Commission met on August 1st. We discussed the Patton Crossing Phase 2 plan that was presented to the board earlier this evening. And the Planning Commission moved to forward that to the Board of Supervisors with the conditions stated earlier, with bicycle parking and completion of staff comments. And the Planning Commission had no work session, and that was the end of the meeting.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Alex. Next on the agenda is Mobility Share Program Agreement for e-bikes, and Project Manager Susan Wheeler is on again.
I'm back. Just to give you an introduction, Alex, if you have the map. Earlier in 2022, I approached Cecily Zhu, who's the Sustainable Transportation Program Manager at Penn State, because as you're aware, the Recreation Advisory Committee is very interested in bicycle paths, shared youth paths, and connectivity between the community. And I contacted Cecily because she is the person who's organizing and works with the Spin e-bike program on campus, which are the electric e-bikes that are orange that you may or may not have seen around. And I approached her because we're part of a common group of interested cyclists and wanted to know how it was that there was an e-bike program on campus and in the borough, because they do actually share those bikes into some portions of the State College borough, and how they weren't actually anywhere else in the community. So Cecily's main interest, of course, is to deal with the Penn State community, and they had a discussion with State College Borough, and I asked if we could have a discussion at the RAC and ultimately with our board about whether or not we could expand some of the e-bike system into Patton Township. So what we discussed at the Recreation Advisory Committee was that we do a test extension of the e-bikes into Patton Township, specifically along the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail and into Toff Trees. We have no map. It doesn't matter. We don't need a map.
Is this one helpful?
No, that's not helpful.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So what we...
Yeah, we have it.
Yes.
Yeah,
So I guess you have the map in front of you. So
Yeah.
actually, what had happened is you can see on there that it actually shows 4 different municipalities and the boundaries between them. And the red dashed line on that map comes out of McKee Street where Sunset Park is, which is near the bottom of that map. And it kind of travels a little up towards the center of the map and then goes right up across the map all the way to the top. So it crosses Ferguson Township, goes back into College, and ultimately it goes into Patton Township near the I-99 interchange, which you can see on that map. When I met with Cecily and when we started to look at this at the Recreation Advisory Committee, we realized that in order to accomplish what we wanted to try to accomplish in Patton Township, the spin bikes would have to be introduced into Ferguson Township because you have to traverse across Ferguson to get back into the service area for the e-bikes. I had a conversation with some of the staff members at Ferguson Township, and they agreed that they were going to investigate and talk about whether or not they would have the spin e-bikes in Ferguson so that we could manage to get across Ferguson and get back over to Patton Township. Since that time, they have adopted the spin e-bike program, and they have a larger geographic area that now you can see spin bikes in Ferguson Township. But more importantly to us is we can traverse over that small section along the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail to get into the Toff Trees area. As a test, the Recreation Advisory Committee is recommending that we have a corridor along the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail to allow people to get up to Toff Trees Avenue and up the hill. And with the Spin e-bike program, they collect the data on usage and travel of all of their bicycles. So we could assess whether or not people are using it, where they're going within that small geographic area, and then at some point in the future, probably the Recreation Advisory Committee would look at that data and maybe make recommendations on further expansions within Patton Township. So the recommendation from the Recreation Advisory Committee is that we expand along the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail into Toff Trees as far as Toff Trees Avenue at this point with the Spin e-bikes, and then assess the progress of that program and probably make another recommendation to you as we collect data if we find that it's useful to our residents.
Okay. Thank you. Do I have any questions? Supervisor Torino.
Susan and I had an earlier meeting earlier this week about other items, and I asked her about this, so I'm very familiar with this proposal, but I just had a thought, since Ferguson has now actually expanded spin use into their township. Park Forest, our part of Park Forest borders Ferguson Township.
That's correct.
That's one thing. Also, we have Vira Boulevard apartment complexes are in Patton Township with predominantly student renters. I'm wondering whether we should expand this trial to include more than just this Bellefonte Rail to Trails pathway, so that students can use spin bikes to get from their residences on Viro down to the campus.
I think that's an excellent idea. I think that the Recreation Advisory Committee was hoping that once we did the original trust, that ultimately that the board would be responsive to expanding, because you're correct, the Ferguson Township line now does allow spin bikes to go as far as Panera on North Atherton Street, because I saw 2 of them there the other day. And also they can go to Tudick, and they can get as far as Tudick, but they can't actually get back into Green Hollow Park, for example, or Park Forest. And so there is a natural extension of the area that we're first recommending here that could be expanded, and I don't think that that would be a problem for Spin or Penn State. They have a 300 e-bikes in their inventory, and so they manage all those 300 e-bikes within whatever geographic area they're trying to utilize, and at some point in the future, if they find that their data suggests there's not enough bikes, then there's a conversation about adding bikes to the whole system. Because the people who use the spin bikes pay for them as they use them, of course. I mean, so you get an app on your phone and you pay by the minute and the trip.
Yeah, I'm curious if, since Ferguson is now included in the geographic area that the spin bike will continue to work, whether we're going to have any abandoned spin bikes when they reach a border where the bike won't work anymore.
Well, they do, actually. They haven't included all of Ferguson Township as a subsection of Ferguson Township,
okay.
but it does meet our boundary line at Patton, where it comes across Biro Boulevard into Park Hills and into Park Forest. So we are a common boundary at that section. They have not covered the whole township. It's a subsection. But what happens is these e-bikes are bounded by a geofence. So with the use of GPS, when they get to that boundary, they just stop working. Often, when they stop working, people will put them there and they leave them there. But of course, they have a system where they track all the bicycles, and they know if there's a bicycle somewhere needs to be moved somewhere else, and they have people who run around to move the bicycles. So that you never end up with a situation where you have 300 bicycles all at one point at a township boundary, for example, that haven't been moved, because they pay their subcontractors to drive around in vans and move them to places where they know there's higher usage.
It'd be interesting if there's any way to collect the data of the numbers of abandoned bikes at our border, and to give you an idea of the demand or the usage.
Yes. Well, Ferguson to date now has only had this smaller geographic area from their whole township in place for a short period of time. So I have not seen that data yet, but I could ask them at Spin if they have that data. I expect, because I saw 2 spin bikes at the Panera, that they got to Viro and they're wondering how they could get across to the Walmart. They couldn't quite figure it out. So they had to leave their bicycles probably and walk and do whatever they did and come back to their bicycle if they chose to go ride back into town. And I think that the areas that we would look at, of course, in Patton would be those areas that would be lend themselves to bicycle travel, you know, through tough trees, and then you get Colonnade and then connect through Park Forest. And so there is kind of a larger bubble that would have a greater community impact.
Very exciting.
Supervisor Magruder.
Yeah, I agree with Dan on this, and so as a younger person who, I guess came here in 2016 and I lived in the soft trees for the Creek area shout for a few years, I'm aware like there's a lot of graduate students out there and older individuals, but it was my experience that the people who like biking, they have their bikes out there, and it didn't really seem like the outside of those new developments that were recently, put in there when the students are there, it didn't really seem like there was a populace that would necessarily utilize these e-bikes. And so I understand trying to test this out and have this smaller sort of like geographical area, and I'm wondering, like, is that the best place to actually be testing this stuff out, because I also am aware of the student housing on the byroads and stuff like that. It seems like that would be a lot more utilized, and what would be the issue with actually making this more robust and sharing
It
that?
could be more robust. I mean, in all honesty, when we started the conversation in the spring of this year, it was, Ferguson wasn't even interested at that point, and we thought rather than going gangbusters and saying we should do a large geographic area, we wanted to test the waters. Actually, as it's turned out, I think that we've moved through time in the last 5 or 6 months, and time itself has proven that it really should be a larger geographic area. But we didn't talk about it at our last RAC meeting, which could have been yesterday, because the recommendation to make a change wouldn't have been available for tonight's board meeting. And so we've left the recommendation as that, but that doesn't mean you can't change the recommendation, of course.
I was just worried about like spending time testing on this area that
Yes.
may not actually be utilized.
Yes. It could, and it could be a different area also. I mean, we could change that boundary, because that's a conversation I would have with Spin. And
And also like the time frame too, like school's starting.
Right.
And I don't want this to drag out
Right.
until, springtime and then.
Yes.
students will be
Well,
able to utilize.
I took my laptop out because I told Spin I would be in touch with them once this meeting was done, because they also are cognizant that school's starting and they want to try and hit that window for whatever expansion is going to be in place, so.
Supervisor Abrams.
Well, along those lines, there's the extensive apartment area right across from Walmart.
Yes, which is,
And then if you take the interior streets, you get to Toff Trees.
yes.
And that way you're not going, because the rail trail thing, while it's great, is a large area that is fairly dark and isolated.
Mhm.
That may not be a confidence builder for people wanting to ride
Yeah, I think
bikes.
the rationale for the RAC also was that a large number of people use the Bellefonte Central Rail Trail to access town from the Toff Trees area and Cedar Cliff. So that large geographic area, you have walkers and joggers and cyclists all the time going back and forth, because from the properties, the rental properties, the student complexes just on the southerly side of Toff Trees, or the closest side to Bellefonte Central Rail Trail, is less than 2 miles to get from there to the creamery, for example. So we recognize that as somewhere that would be kind of a safe option, but I think perhaps it should be reconsidered, and it could be a different kind of geographic area, serve a different a broader population.
Okay. Supervisor Whitman, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I believe that you've been in contact with Valerie Burnett at some point. She might have reached out to you. She's done a lot of research on the Bellefonte Rail Trail and trails in sidewalks in Toff Trees.
I've not heard from Valerie.
Oh, okay. I would assume she would have reached out to you. She's actually stood at points on the rail trail.
Yes,
and done
but
that.
I've never not spoken to her directly on any of those.
Oh, okay. So I just actually would like to mention her, because she's a big proponent of Bellefonte Rail Trail, and this is maybe an affirmation of her assessment. But I'd also like to comment on what Sujan said about questioning whether, or saying that a lot of people who ride bikes have their own bikes. But what I see happening with the e-bikes is that people are testing out these bikes, the e-bikes, and you can rent them for whatever, to get back and forth and convenience, and if the bus isn't running, you whatever. And then they go out and buy them. So I see this as an easy first step in doing that. I don't know if younger people today grow up with bikes. I did, I'm at a certain age, and so I just don't see younger kids riding. The places are not as safe, perhaps, as maybe when I was growing up. But yeah, so I think it's what is it like? Kind of like a drug, like this is the e-bike will lead to bigger things. I don't know. I'm trying to say that in a more diplomatic way, but.
And I hear you, and this is not me, like, moving this idea.
No, I know.
It's just I would
But
seem
it's,
like it would be more effective to make this a little bit more expansive than just
Yes.
that particular area. I would
Right.
be in support of piloting something more
Okay,
So exciting.
I'm looking for it, it's a pilot, period. So if we can just get it started, I don't want to be behind the 8 ball. You've got Ferguson and State College already in the mix, and here, Patton's not in the mix here. So, what I would like to do is, take a vote.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move that we approve this micro-mobility share program agreement.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Susan, for all your hard work and looking forward to this.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is another 5-minute break so we can set up for our next presentation. Thank you. Meeting back to order. Next on the agenda is administration, financial trends of monitoring. Director of Finance, Larry Pager, give us an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now we got to the real exciting part of the meeting. So our financial trends monitoring, this marks the 13th year we've done this report. So it's including 13 years of statistics that we look at different key indicators to see the trends, if we have any items that we have to be concerned about, or things that are moving in a favorable position. So without any further ado, let's go through our population growth. Our population growth is went down in 2020 with the census. I think everybody's dead because we're not really quite sure whether the census was completely accurate or not. But it's creeping back up again. The current population is 15,766, which is a little bit less than a 1% increase over 2020 census data of 15,650. Our demographics, this shows, our population by age. Just to let you know that 89%, almost 90% of our population is under the age of 65, which I think that's what we would expect to see in a college town, and 70% being between 20 years and 65 years old. Our sources of revenue. As you can see, our biggest source of revenue in 2011 was real estate taxes. That's still our biggest source of revenue. Just this year, in 2021, it looked a little bit less because of the intergovernmental revenue, which were the grants that we received for Fox Hill Road and Burnell intersection and the Equine Hospital. Our revenue by source, as you can see here, you can see in, if I can see how I get this, you can see in the non-tax revenue in 2021 that's a lot higher. It's a bigger, that gold is a bigger gold bar than. This is a comparison of revenue and expenses. That's stable. Our expenditures for the last couple of years were higher than our revenue because we were trying to bring our fund balance down. Now we're more in our normal mode, which is our revenue is a little bit higher in 2021 than our expenditures. Our expenditures by function is stable. The big numbers being the debt that we pay, and in the community service, others items, those are where our payments went out for some like the Equine Hospital grants and such. We're still stable in our benefits as a percentage of total wages. I just bring to your attention that in 2020 we had a big dip. The way our benefits work is we're self-insured. So during 2020, during the pandemic, nobody could go to the doctors. Therefore, we didn't have to pay any doctor bills. So our benefit cost went down as a percentage of wages because we weren't paying any doctor bills. It's back up to 53% this year, which is back to where it was back in 2019, which is the year that I would compare it against. And it's under 2018. Between 2018 and 2019, we made a change where we introduced a small deductible to our plan that brought our costs down, and we're seeing the benefit for that. So I would say that the benefits as a percentage of total wages are stable at this point. Our liquidity is, our unfunded pension liability is still at 0.07%. That's stable. We're not seeing anything different. This will change if the market continues to fall, and then we become more unfunded. But hopefully that won't happen. We look at this number every 2 years with the valuation from the actuary. The liquidity, which is the ratio of cash to our current liabilities, went up a little bit in 2021, only because our cash was coming down, and now we're seeing that. Cash coming down, our liabilities will remain the same, so the ratio would be a little bit higher. But still favorable. The ratio of long-term debt to assessed values, this went up a little bit because of the PIB loan that we borrowed that came in 2021 for Burnell Road, Fox Hill intersection. So this went up in 2021, but it will start coming back down again in 2022 in years following that. So it went up in 2017 because we had the big borrowing, and then it came down. It went up a little bit in 2021 because we had the borrowing, and now it will come down again. Unemployment obviously is favorable. Our unemployment is back down to 3% after being up over 10% back in 2020. So that's favorable for Center County. And that's it. Anybody have any questions on the financial trends monitoring report?
Any supervisor would like to question our Director of Finance at this time? Seeing none, thank you, Larry. Next on the agenda is
Our mid-year report.
Yes, thank you, Larry. Larry again.
Larry again. So our mid-year report is a report that I do every year at the end of June. I look at the numbers at the end of June to see how we are faring against our budget, with some assumptions of what's going to happen in the second half of the year, obviously. I'm not as good as forecasting as Elliot was, so I have to guess in the second half of the year what's going to happen. But based on my educated assessment, it looks like our year-to-date revenues are going to come in at 2% over budget, so they'll be better than budget. And our year-to-date expenditures should come in at about 1% under budget. Some of the highlights on the revenue is our earned income in LST, our local services taxes have been tracking about 10% above budget, so that helps. It's a little bit offset by the real estate tax, tracking 8% below budget. The zoning permit applications have been tracking $47,000 over budget, so we've been getting a lot more in zoning permit applications. And the Abington Equine Hospital grant, I'm expecting it to be 72% over budget due to timing differences. We were expecting it to come in last year, and it came in this year. Expenditures, the only thing that's really affecting that, obviously, it's our biggest number in expenditures in the budget is our salaries and benefits. And they're coming in below budget due to some departments are having difficulty hiring new employees. So we have some open positions that we're not paying, so our salaries are better, so we'll be below budget. So that's the mid-year report. Anybody have any questions on that? I'll be more than happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Larry. Any questions from the supervisors at this time? Right, seeing none, thank you again. Next on the agenda.
Thank you.
Is the disposition of the American Rescue Plans Fund. Doug, I think it's your update.
Thank you. I put this on the agenda as a matter of expediency so that we can loudly declare what we're going to do with this money, so it will be officially obligated, because I have a fear that at some point some people might start making noise about asking for some of this money back. So if we can do whatever we can do to get this obligated and start spending it, that's the motive behind this. As noted, we can take all the money that we've received half of it. We haven't received the second.
I've not received the second half, but I expect that it will come.
The state says it's in the mail.
Yes, I expect it will come sometime in September. I would think it would come before election.
Probably. So, yeah, we fully believe we're going to receive all the money. As the regulations for the program evolved over the last 18 months or so, I think you know there's this allowance that you can elect to call revenue replacement or lost revenue that we can declare all of our money as that. And Larry, when he filed our first report back in April, made that declaration. So, yeah, so we're there, and then in the resolution there was some other information just to document that how we're spending the money still is within the confines or within the regulations as they've been published to date. So, and just the dollar amounts, $500,000 per year for 3 years, and then the remainder. We want to keep our federal funds that we spend in any 1 year less than $750,000, because once we hit that threshold, then we have to do additional audits, although they've revised those audit requirements too, I understand. But it's better to stay under that 750. So that's where the $500,000 number came from and why it's spread out over the 4 years. So with that, if the board has any further questions, Larry and I are here to answer, and if not, I'd ask the board to consider action to approve resolution 2022-018.
Supervisor Torino?
What about the spending that the individual supervisors have recommended that you?
Well, since we're using this money for payroll expenses, that'll free up additional general fund monies that then we will use some of those monies to fund those projects. So all the projects that were talked about over the last month, a year, actually, and I think there was a copy of those in the June budget. Those will all go into the capital improvement plan, and we'll budget all those for the next year or two.
Yeah, we'll take those out of general fund, but they'll still be funded, just instead of paying it's much easier when we file the paperwork with the Treasury Department that we have one line that says payroll, as opposed to additional, a number of smaller projects that they could audit.
And payroll is probably our most heavily documented expenditure that we have. So,
Second question, how come you didn't utilize the entire amount that we're expecting?
Well, that in 2025, well, we're not sure exactly what the final amount will be. For two reasons. There are a few communities in Pennsylvania that didn't accept the funds, so those funds will be redistributed to everybody. And then plus whatever earnings, interest earnings we may earn on these ARP monies, we'll plow those back into payroll costs also.
I see.
So that's why there isn't an exact, that's
And
why
we have till.
2025 says all remaining ARP
Yeah,
funds.
so we have till the end of 2025 to spend it. So we're going to
Okay.
spread it on over the number of years so that we don't run into the $750,000 threshold for civil office.
Right.
Okay, Supervisor Abrams.
I didn't suggest this earlier in the year because I just didn't think about it, but somebody pointed out to me that, you know, in Ferguson Township, they have the traffic lights that have the blinking yellows. It makes it more efficient to turn left at certain intersections. And it seems like right out here would be a perfect place for such a light.
Were you listening in on our
Were you in our
department head
meeting
meeting?
today?
And there may be a few other places, and if, you know, there's extra money just sitting around there, that give that the green light.
Yeah, so Alex is actually working on putting together a budget for that throughout here, and then I think somewhere else I have a note that says Elliot wanted to look at traffic signals on Atherton Street, so
Somebody
we'll
told me-
create another CIP project for that.
Somebody told me that at the farmer's market,
Yes.
there's a huge backup because of the light.
Yeah,
Yeah, interesting.
we'll continue to look at that.
Thank you. Supervisor Magruder.
I mean, I agree to move this motion for this resolution
Okay.
to,
Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you, Larry, again. Next on the agenda is the disposition of the American,
No,
oh, I'm
we just
next,
did that.
sorry. All right, next is the board input for the 2023 and 2027 capital improvement plan.
I told you this was all the exciting stuff.
All right, I'm just writing down, Elliot suggested a flashing yellow at Green Tech and
Yes,
Valley Vista, so we'll add that. And if anybody else has any ideas in the next few days,
thank you.
contact me.
I think, follow up on Elliot, I also had residents talk about the flashing light here, so,
Oh,
okay. So you're on, Doug.
Okay, so we're done with board input for 2022, 2027 capital improvement plan. Do you want, are we ready to move to council of governments? Okay, I think we have Mr. Norberg and Joe Viglione are both with us from COG. So let me just go through the agenda materials. So you have copies of the COG program plan for, let's say 2023 COG program plan. 2023. The 2027 capital improvement plan, but you had those documents, the correct documents were linked to those files, or were also included with the agenda. There were several other documents that were also included in the agenda. The first one was the business plan for the Parks and Rec mobile concessions unit, which you had a prior copy, then they did do an update, a revised copy that I distributed with the update yesterday. So that's called Grub on the Go, or Grub on the Go, excuse me. That's item 7E.3. And then Eric Nornberg, our COG Executive Director, also provided several other documents that were listed there on the page 12 of the agenda update that included a memo from Eric, and then several other attachments. Item 7E6, which was the bundled personnel requests that were presented to the Human Resources, the COG Human Resources Committee in May. There was a copy of the staffing study that Parks and Rec had done. I didn't include all the appendices, but the bulk of the report was included. There was also at item 7E.8, a staffing study presentation. That was, I think, also made to Human Resources Committee at some point. And then a couple of separate slides from that presentation with some annotations. 79 was slide 1, showing that not all the positions that had been proposed in the original study had been requested by Parks and Rec. And then, again, some more information on the alternate that Parks and Rec was putting forward as part of that program plan request. And then the item that I worked on was item 7E.4, and that's .4R now for revised. So I had gone through and made some comments on the request that COG had for specific input on specific items. As I noted, there are some general comments I made that I thought were important to pass on to COG. Again, comment number 1 was long-term financial planning. Again, we think, putting as much information and much into your CIP and your long-range planning is very, very helpful and useful, and helps us when we get down to our specific budgets. So we encourage COG to do as much long-term financial planning as possible. My general comment number 2, it's on page 1 of item 74, was instead of looking at capital needs that are, asked as, should this department do this, buy this or not, I think to try to give people a sense of priority that those should be ranked. And I came up with a 4-tiered ranking schedule that went from very high to low to kind of help and just give COG a sense of where we think these things are. In every agency may have very high desires, but when you put them all together, we may or may not be able to fund all of them across all the agencies. So I think there needs to be some sort of prioritization that helps everybody decide what can be done in 2023 and what might have to wait for another year before it can find sufficient funding. And then again, in respect to the parks, new employee positions, I think one of the primary things I would like to see is that if there are new employee positions coming on board, that these positions should be financed by user costs. People are using programs, either new people that are coming to programs because there's expanded capacity or because fees are being increased. But one way or the other, that I think it's really unfair to have the non-users pay the majority of the cost for new programs because somebody hired new people. So again, I threw out 75% of the new costs should be funded by users. That 75, obviously, there's some discussion could be had if that's the right balance. But I feel strongly that way. I think I've made that comment consistently for probably the last 8 to 10 years with Parks and Rec. Every time they look at raising municipal contributions, my question is, if municipal contributions are being raised, i.e. those are the non-program users, the taxpayers who aren't doing the swim programs or the other programs that Parks and Rec is doing, you know, at least the users ought to pay at least the same increase. They ought to see the same increase as the non-users. And ideally, they should see a bigger increase in the non-users, but at the end of the day, that's a policy matter. With that, I think, you know, Dan Trevino and Pam Robb did provide a few comments. Dan's comments are in blue and Pam's are in green. And we can go through these things specifically if you'd like. But with that, I will cease my yammering, my chatting, and look to the board for how you might want to proceed, or see if you have specific questions for Eric or Joe with regards to any of these items.
Eric, Joe, thank you for waiting and being with us. Supervisor Abrams.
I saw the comments that you guys put in there, and I opened the thing up in the Google Documents and put some of my own in, but then I think I realized that when I saved it, it never went anywhere. But basically, I agreed with what you had on those expenditures that should be funded by the users, and I agreed with the comments that Dan had made.
Thank you. Any other supervisor has questions at this time while we have Eric and Joe available? Okay. Supervisor Trevino?
I don't have a question for Eric or Joe, but I just noticed that on one of the things, the mobile concession proposal, Doug and I ranked them, had different rankings. I was very impressed with the business plan that COG had put together, Pam Salakangas and her staff, and along with Joe and Eric. I think they made a very good case. I think it's well justified to go ahead and move forward with that particular plan. So that's why I ranked priority as high. Doug ranked it as medium. So I don't know, Doug, if you want to speak to your ranking.
I'll defer to you unless the board tells me otherwise. I think it was general. If there's money to fund it in the upcoming year or this year, I would go ahead. But if there are other higher priorities, I think that was just my personal opinion, could wait.
Well, they already have money this year, in this year's budget. They have general funds money they were planning to utilize initially.
But I think, I would just defer to your comment, and that's what we submit as the consensus comments of the board.
And anyone else want to speak to that?
Yes, I also agreed with Dan. After reviewing, I also would like to thank for the extensive report that Joe and Pam did. Every question before we even asked it was answered on the proposal, and you did your due diligence. So I really appreciate, your work. I thank Dan for his input on that, and I'm with Dan on it should be put on high. Any other supervisor at this time? Any other comments?
I'm hungry.
Betsy? All right.
Playgrounds.
So what do we need? Do we need anything else on this? Doug?
I'll just submit these as the consensus comments of the board, with the exceptions as Dan noted. And get those to Joe yet tonight.
All right. Joe and Eric, thank you. I think you're going to be on for the next couple of issues here.
Well, no, F is really a discussion for the board here.
Okay.
To see if you can come to, if you need more information, and if you're ready to come to a consensus before you go back. So,
I think, as we talked during the general forum, all of my questions were answered for that.
well, there
Any
seemed to
other
be some
supervisor?
confusion and from some people
Yeah, for some people.
about what it might mean. I think the biggest issue was, there was some discussion about, selling the building and getting some windfall type of revenues that I just don't think would ever be there, because there'd be other costs. If COG's not in that building, there's other costs that we would have to cover. So, again, if you have questions for me, I'll try to explain, I put forward, I think, my explanation, what the managers thought on it. And I think at some point it'll come back up. I think you're discussing that executive committee
Yes.
tomorrow. So if the board needs a discussion on the issue today to come to a consensus, you can do it now. If you think you're in good shape, then we can move to the next item.
I think at the general forum, my questions were answered, and we had our expert there who was answering the questions. Any other response or comments from the board?
No, I agree. So are we supposed to have consensus then for transferring ownership to
Doug?
COG in 2028?
Doug?
Yeah, I mean, that was the manager's recommendation. Again, there's no right or wrong answer in this issue. It's what you think is best. Transferring the ownership should streamline the planning and some of the future actions that COG might have to take. But it's still gonna fall on the elected officials to make all those decisions, so.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure on this? So are we all in agreement? Okay,
I am, yeah.
okay. So we're all in agreement, it's a
Okay.
consensus.
I'll let you take that back to COG at the appropriate time.
All right. Eric and Joe, thank you. All right, moving right along is the voting delegates for the Pennsylvania Municipal League Summit in October. Doug?
Well, I forgot to put down when here it is on the section. The resolution committee will convene on Friday, October 7th at 1:30, and then the annual business meeting is on Saturday at 9 a.m. So the voting delegate would need to be available for both of those. Pam and Betsy have indicated they're going to attend, so one of you gets to be the voting delegate and the other one can be the alternate.
Okay.
So, however you want to decide that.
Yeah,
And
so,
then
and I actually want to
COG,
leave.
and then PML wants everybody to sign, this is what you all decided. So.
Okay, and I actually want to leave Friday evening and come back, so I'd be there all day Thursday and Friday, but,
Okay, then I'll be the voting.
so there won't be an alternate.
Well, if you're not gonna be available,
Saturday.
I guess I can be the alternate,
Oh, okay.
just in case.
Okay. Thank you,
I
Doug.
can be the alternate too, Doug, in case you're coming back.
Doug.
Because I'm going to give Pam a ride.
Okay, I have to coordinate with Larry, I can't remember what days I think I was gonna be there Friday through Saturday, but I don't.
Yeah, I think,
Double check.
Pam, you're planning on being there till Sunday, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so Pam and I will be there till Sunday, so.
It'll be
okay,
Larry or I will be the alternate then.
great.
Great, thanks.
Okay, then I need to make a motion.
We can just do it by consensus, we're good.
Okay, well,
Unless somebody else on the board wants to contest it.
okay, can I get a consensus? All right, sounds good. Moving on, the consented agenda. Doug, you're on.
There's several items, including a award contract for oak wilt injections, zoning officer agreement with Patton Township, contract for guide rail replacement on Purdue Mountain Road, minutes from last meeting, July vouchers, and the ever-important scheduling of trick or treat for Halloween Day.
Okay, is there any item or items of consent that a supervisor would like to pull at this time? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, the motion passes. Next on the agenda is manager's report. Doug, you're on.
Trying to get to the proper.
So while you're looking for that, I would like to, if you can please put the on the September agenda schedule, I request that the presentation from Derek and Jackie from CATA on the CATA Go launching be put on the September agenda. I attended the open public meeting August 10th. The information presented was very informative and vital to all riders in the Center County area, especially Patton Township riders. If we could put this or schedule the presentation in September, it would be very beneficial to all. Thank you.
I will reach out to them and see if I can make that happen.
Okay.
So, item 9A is correspondence. The development update was included from the zoning officer. If you have questions, I can respond. There was a complaint about noise on a resolution I just thought was interesting. Provided you some information on that. And then update on the PFAs, groundwater issue in Benner Township, right adjacent to Patton Township. There was the latest update from DEP included. It's under announcements. As of yesterday, there were still some items in the parklet from the resident on Gaynor Drive. We're going to do another follow-up tomorrow to see, and then we'll probably, if there's stuff left, if there's items still left that need to be removed, we'll have to take steps ourselves to remove those, and we'll coordinate with the solicitor to make sure we take all the legal steps that we need to do, but we will keep moving forward on that at this point. Any questions on those items? And as Pam noted, Catago began Monday, I think, correct? And,
Yes.
if you have questions, go to CATA's website or call CATA or call Pam. But I think it's a great, I think the board should be acknowledged for their efforts to convince CATA that service was really important for the Park Forest neighborhood. And I think it's an example of, working together with CATA to get that going. And we should extend our thanks to Mark Parfit too.
Yes.
For all the work he did on our behalf. Upcoming events, office will be closed on Labor Day. As we discussed, several of us will be at the Municipal League Summit in Pittsburgh, October 6th to 9th. There is a PSATS regional conference in Bollesburg on the 25th. We'll have bulk next time, I think bulk pickup is in October sometime. And Halloween is now officially on the 31st of October. That's the end of my report.
All right, thank you. Moving on, next on the agenda is the committee reports. Is there any supervisor that would like to add or to their committee report at this time? Okay, seeing none. Next is other business. Doug?
No, nothing for me.
Student? Supervisor Magruder?
Yeah, I don't need to take up too much space with this, but I think it's important to acknowledge the recent signing of the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022. I guess I have a question, probably for Doug, but I think this is a historic piece of legislation, And while not perfect and doesn't solve all issues, I think there's a lot of good in it. And the fact that it is really committed to actual people and not just like corporations, but people as well as the environment, I think that's something to take stock of. And so appreciative of this administration and people working together to get that done. I am curious, when big things like this come up, like who in our sort of like government like looks over this stuff? When might we expect monies and its impact on Patton? Yeah, just curiosity around that.
Usually what we do is rely on organizations like Pennsylvania Municipal League and PSATs, Pennsylvania's Supervisors, Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Those organizations, and they have national, there's national organizations that they work with too. Usually have analysts who will look at that legislation over and provide summaries, and there's another GFOA, which Government Finance Officers Association, and then there's a managers association too. So between all those associations, they'll generally will look over these large packages and let us know where the opportunities might be. So at this point, we're going to wait and see what they tell us and inform us, and we'll pass on that information. So, and if there's grant opportunities or funding opportunities, we'll take a look at them and see if we have any projects or anything that aligns with those programs. Federal money, unless you're going after a lot of federal money, there's a lot of strings attached to federal money typically, except for the American Rescue Plan.
Exactly.
But most other federal programs are pretty docu-intensive. And so, I mean, unless you're going for millions of dollars, sometimes it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to go get a $100,000 federal grant, because you'll spend $50,000 just administering it. So, but if there's something that, if we're thinking big, there might be something.
I would like us to think big. And at the end of the day, this is our money, not as a government official, but as a resident. Taxpayers, we pay money to government to do work, to be able to dispense it for the betterment of our society. So it would encourage people to also take a look at what's actually in this text. And
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything specific that's in that program that might pertain to local government, but.
hey, we're doing a lot of sustainability stuff, and there's going to be a lot of jobs. Go ahead.
I noticed that one place in the program plan that I'm looking at or noticing, the Parks and Rec Department has put in for part-time a grant writer, I believe. And there's been talk about the sustainability, the planning department, the sustainability director, Pam Adams, also as we're looking at, and was in my report for the Action and Sustainability Committee, we're actually looking at putting, concrete actions out there. So we've got a broad plan. And a good example is, you want to decrease the amount of cars in the area. Well, the SPIN e-bike program is a very specific, that's an example of a very specific plan. So, and I think there might be some discussion forthcoming about, I would like to see another person hired in the sustainability department to maybe do the grant writing. So I think that might be one way to be able to utilize that money.
In line with what Sutan was saying, maybe there's enough interest in the community that we'd have a joint work session with any citizens that are interested and ourselves to see if we come up with any things we haven't thought of with this before it becomes too late to make any applications. I got a sense with some of the American Rescue stuff in parts of the county anyway, we were a little slow getting off the blocks and missed opportunities to apply for things.
Okay.
And we did that for the American
Supervisor
Rescue.
Whitman?
No, we did exactly that. And actually got a lot of people writing back saying they wanted to support small businesses. I think wasn't that for the American Rescue Plan?
Yeah, when we got the American Rescue Plan money, we did a survey.
Yeah.
Supervisor McGruder, is that it?
I mean, that's all I got for now.
Okay. Last, but I would like to put on the agenda, I spoke with the fire department on August 22nd to 28th. There's going to be an impact of construction work downtown in State College, and there's going to be major detours. Also, as a continuation on August 29th to September the 6th, they're also going to be continue repairing the sewer system. What the fire department has asked is that our drivers yield when you see the fire trucks or EMT vehicles coming, because the detour is going to be, or the construction is going to be right there at Alpha Firehouse. So it's going to take a little time to get to the fire calls. So we just ask to be mindful and work with the construction, the details, the destruction, and the details and the detours. But to be very mindful of our fire departments as they are answering fire calls and our EMT. Most people don't pull over like they're supposed to. We're asking, please, be in compliance to the law. And when you see them, yield and pull over. It may save a life. Thank you. Next on the agenda is to adjourn. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, everyone. This meeting is now adjourned.